Hello and welcome to episode 18 of AR Chat. I'm Steven Dickens, one of your co-hosts here, and I'm joined as always by my wonderful co-hosts, Crystal Golightly and Nathan Herman. This week we've got Keith Andes on the show, so we're going to dive straight in. Keith, tell us a little bit about you. Introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers.
I highly appreciate it, and thank you for having me here. Again, Keith Andes, and I am the head of product marketing at EasyVista today. That is an ITSM company, not one of the maybe most known ones, but it is a global player based out of Paris, but definitely works globally. And before EasyVista, I was a Gartner analyst. So that's usually what's going to be
We won't hold
more.
that against you, Keith.
Yeah.
This is a safe space.
Oh, thank goodness. No, I appreciate it. And yeah, as a former analyst, it's been obviously rather interesting to kind of jump out of fantasy land and join the real world and see what it's like out here. And of course, it's it's tough, as anyone would expect.
Poacher turn gamekeeper or gamekeeper turn poacher? I don't know.
Me neither, to be honest. Yeah, me neither. So I've had the opportunity as a head of product marketing. I'm actually the only product marketer at the company, but also the analyst relations person, right? So I run those functions. And so it's been a pleasure to kind of see both sides of the table and how things work from both angles. And what I've found relatively recently, and I think you all have found as well, is I've been sharing some thoughts on LinkedIn, which seems to resonate with quite a few people. So I guess seeing both sides of the table is maybe a little bit useful.
Well, especially when you mention Gartner, like in your LinkedIn post, I think the algorithm gives you a 10,000-fold boost for engagement.
Yeah, it's a cheat code, absolutely.
But Keith, like, given your experience having been an analyst and then on the other side at a vendor gives you a really interesting perspective. So I'd love if you would like double click into that a little bit. Like, were there any things you had to unlearn? And what are the things where you're like, I don't know, something radical, which I could probably just reference your LinkedIn and
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of different threads we're going to be able to pull hopefully today, and I'm sure we'll get into a lot more of it. But just a couple things that I guess I learned instantly that shocked me a little bit when I left Gartner is, the Gartner world knows that the Gartner world is known, if that makes sense, and so that in itself can be
I love
a little...
that way of describing it. That speaks a lot.
Yeah.
So basically, are you saying you learned that there's life beyond Gartner?
Yes. Oh,
It's
surprise,
very
surprise.
important, but also there are other textures and...
Oh, yeah. Well, one of the things that I was so surprised about was how many different analyst firms there are and reports there are. I knew there were others, of course, but I didn't see any of that when I was at Gartner, because I went from not knowing what an analyst relation firm was to working at one to becoming an analyst over time. I didn't even start as an analyst, by the way. I started very entry level and worked my way up. But so coming out and seeing all these analyst firms, and I was like, oh, they're coming out of the woodwork. I've got a lot of people I need to learn about and work with all of a sudden as an analyst relations person.
So here's a question for you and Steven, actually, based off of that. Do analysts read other analyst firms' reports and findings?
So I'll go first. Selectively. So there is people I respect in my space that I will read what they put out. So Brent knows I'm a fanboy of his, but Brent Ellis at Forrester, he will write and put something out. I will religiously read what he puts out because he's super smart. He gets it. I know where he's getting his signal from. He's got a very good way to process that signal. So I'll read his stuff. I'll read Ali Mellon's from a security point of view just to stay current. Katie Norton at IDC. I'll look out for Ashish and Matt Eastwood stuff at IDC. If Matt Kimball's posting something from More Insights and Strategy, I'll read that. And I'm talking skim read. I don't kind of religiously go. The challenge you've got as an analyst reading other stuff is, I don't have a Gartner seat or an IDC seat or a Forrester seat. So if it's a public-facing blog, yes. If it's behind a paywall, I'm kind of struggling. I will, if it's particularly interesting, sort of ask people to say, "Hey, is there a way I can read this?" But
Steven abides to the terms and conditions of all analyst firms.
But I mean, you can I mean, I'm obviously not going to be buying a Gartner seat for infrastructure, so don't
You
get
don't
me.
have just like, 100K or whatever laying around.
I mean, obviously I do, but I wouldn't spend it on that even if I did.
I'm sure there's a watch with your name on it.
Yeah. I'd be buying different things if I had a spare 100K. It wouldn't be a Gartner seat. No, but I mean, all joking aside, I think there's the reading of what they write, but there's the conversations over dinner. I was at a Splunk event this week. I always make a beeline to have a coffee with Matt Eastwood and chat to him in detail. There's certain people I will make sure I sit next to and, hey, what are you buying this? Does this make sense to you? Are you? So we share notes a lot. So whether that's reading their content or just sharing notes at events or,
that makes sense.
We talk to each other about the vendors and
look, analyst relations folks chat to each other about the analysts and the firms. It makes sense.
Yeah. Keith, what about you? What was your experience?
I think just well said with sharing notes and scanning, right? So the biggest thing, or the key approach as far as, we're going to publish a piece of research, and as with any kind of business, it's looking at what is competitive in the market right now, right? So basically what I was encouraged always to do by my peers and bosses was take a look to see what's out there, right? So if you're going to publish a Magic Quadrant on IT service management, which I did, I was one of the co-authors for that, we'd better know what comes up on Google when you try to search for how to buy an ITSM tool, right? And so we would do that, of course. And Forrester, of course, is a primary competitor for Gartner, so we were aware of what Forrester was doing with their wave. So having that context was allowing us to make sure that what we're delivering to the market is something that you can't get anywhere else. So that was definitely something we would do.
I think, Nathan, there's actually a takeaway here. I was having this conversation with a CMO on Wednesday night, and he's trying to create ultimately a category. Ultimately would like to, he's in category creation mode. And we were exploring that, and I said, we all read each other's stuff. So if you can get independents to write about you, Gartner and IDC and Forrester are going to read that stuff, or they're going to at least see it go across their LinkedIn feed. So I think it is a practical step, acknowledging the genesis story of your question of, do analysts read each other's stuff? I think the answer is yes. Do analysts talk about vendors? Yes. If you're trying to do category creation or influence IDC and Forrester and Gartner, one way to do that is to get boutiques and independents and tier twos to write about you, because they will see it. Now, I'm not saying, because I write an article that the Gartner person's going to change their mind. It's not a direct causation.
Steven, that makes complete sense. No one wants to be the last mover. And the more noise there is in the market about something, the more I think the likelihood is other people will pay attention. I mean, I think of SASE. Obviously, Cato was at the forefront of SASE before it was SASE, and then Gartner came out with the term SASE, Secure Access Service Edge. And that kind of came to dominate the market. For a very hot minute there, Forrester was moving forward with this term Zero Trust Edge, ZTE. And it was actually not that many months ago that Andre Kindness published a blog saying, like, hey, we lost the battle on this one. Like, no one calls SASE Zero Trust Edge. Like, we need to call it SASE too. And look, words matter. And the more people that use a word, the more likely is it's going to catch on.
Well, I mean, you look at analysts influence customers, they influence channel partners, they influence stakeholders. Analysts also influence other analysts.
It's interesting you say that, because when I logged into LinkedIn, I think when I landed this morning or last night, or I don't even know, I saw Francis Odom actually had a really nice post breaking down the evolution of SASE, which I don't actually know exactly what that is, but I know it's like a hot thing in security.
It's the convergence of enterprise networking and security.
Yeah, that. And it was interesting because, and maybe this is what sprung the question for you, but he was referencing some, I think it was Gartner research, and it was really interesting to see how the ecosystem on the analyst side kind of plays off of each other in the public sphere. And Francis Odo, man, he keeps popping up. I want to actually switch gears a little bit. Keith, I want to talk about you and your current role, because you're leading product marketing and you've also been interchanging that with doing AR, which is really interesting because we don't hear that as much. So talk to us more about that. How do you have this mashup role? How do you feel about the mashup role? All the things. Go.
Yeah, I think I'll just go. I think this is a fun conversation that I'd love to have more conversations about with AR people and product marketing people. Because, for me, it's not uncommon for me to do kind of uncommon things and take unusual paths.
I love that.
And, so right now I'm a product marketer who's never been a product marketer before, who runs AR, and I've never run AR before. But I have, obviously a lot of relevant experience as a Gartner analyst that's both helpful for analyst relations, but also surprisingly helpful for product marketing. Having gone through the whole publication process and writing technical writing that's also hopefully compelling enough for people to actually read, and talking to multiple different audiences, all those different things. But one of the things that's been very fascinating to me is as I've kind of learned the journey, both seeing it from Gartner, looking at what software vendors are doing, and now kind of validating some of my learnings being in the software world, is that there's a lot of challenges with product marketing and AR that I was able to see just from the results that people were getting when I was a Gartner analyst. And I'm seeing those challenges now here. And one of the biggest ones...
You're not only seeing them, you're feeling them.
Oh, yeah. Feeling them very, very deeply and personally. Exactly.
Which is
exactly.
a totally different motion, I'm sure.
Oh, yes, it is. And as I said before, it's kind of, I moved from fantasy land to the real world, right? And now I roll up my sleeves and I actually do work instead of just talk about it. And that's one of the reasons I came out here. I wanted to do that. And of course, it's more painful that way, but that's fine. That's a part of the journey. So, but for product marketing, and I think this is where analyst relations and product marketing come together really well, is a lot of the times for product marketing, people think about the outputs of the role a lot. A deck, a really nice, pretty deck, a really nice pamphlet or PDF, or all the assets that product marketers make. So they're kind of a vending machine for assets, sales enablement materials.
Oh, I love that. Vending machine for assets.
I was going to say product marketers don't love that. But the phrase, I mean, it really is what it feels like sometimes.
And so visual, actually. That could definitely be like a sticker.
Yeah, but to support Keith here and make sure he gets out of the hole he might have just dug himself into, product marketing is so much more than that, right?
No, I'm not saying it is. But it pulls on a thread of that's how other people perceive the role. That's not what it is. It's like, you're where I go to click E3 and get a white paper or get a podcast.
Iceberg,
and it's obviously not good to be perceived that way, because that's what people come to you for the most, which means that's where you end up spending a lot of time, which is not good. So one of the things that I realized as an analyst was that I was seeing in company marketing that a lot of companies had a really hard time tying their strategy and their story together. And I always thought that was odd, because it was like, well, shouldn't your story be your strategy? Like, why are you having to reverse engineer that? And, really you should set out to do a thing, tell people what you're doing, sell them that thing, solve problems for them, and repeat the cycle. It's the strategy is the story, right? And so I learned over time very quickly in product marketing that we start at the ends because we're starting with the outputs, and that's what we're worried about. But where product marketing is most valuable is the inputs, not the outputs. And the inputs are, what do the customers want? What do the prospects want? And those aren't always the same thing. What do our other stakeholders want? What does sales need? What's the market doing? What are our competitors doing? What does the future look like? What do the analyst firms think, right? All these different things are the inputs or intake part of product marketing. And it's the most important part, because those things are how you build the strategy, which is the story.
And everything.
And the last part I'd add real quick is analyst relations is very, very central to that intake component. So from my perspective, analyst relations is one of the most important parts of product marketing. So I'm very happy personally that I own both, but I also don't know what other people usually do.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I think everything you just highlighted is part of the reason that you're seeing an increasing number of AR teams report into the head of marketing or the director of product marketing. Because I think good AR is just as much good product marketing as it is anything else. They are very closely intertwined.
It's probably the way to collect the data from those stakeholders, synthesize that data and flow it into the, I'm thinking almost top of the funnel for product marketers, if you think of it right. That makes sense.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. I mean, I see product marketing and AR together in a perfect world as
rather
kind
than
of like
a comms function, Keith, rather than a comms function, because that's the other place it tends to
that's
sit.
the output, not the input, right?
I
So,
like
but we
it.
got to think about both, and so that's why I think AR and product marketing share similar problems.
Keith, you framing this up as inputs and outputs is actually really kind of takes us back to our format. And I'm sorry to cut you off here, but we usually start this show off, and we've kind of gotten off of script a lot lately, but I kind of love that for us. Because we kind of give this ode to the history. And a lot of times the history is deeply rooted in comps, but your framing of inputs and outputs really, I think, illustrates the frictions of the marketing problem, the branding or the name. You know what I'm saying? So that just totally did like a big connector for me in my brain of like, oh wow, when you talk about it like that, it just makes it so obvious why these roles aren't valued as a strategic
Well,
asset, but
like,
more of a means to an end or
I think we're also hitting on why it's so hard to bucket the value of both product marketing and analyst relations. I'm only speaking from my world that I live every day, but our product marketing team are jack of all trades, masters of everything. Like they are asked to do strategy, they are asked to do business planning, they are asked to go speak at customer events, they are asked to help out with the product roadmap and reviewing product market fit and features. I think AR has a lot of that same kind of problem where depending on the person and the program and the company, you're doing a smattering of different things beyond just the traditional kind of lane of AR, right? You are again helping out with business planning, you are helping out with product market fit, you might be jumping on calls with customers and prospects. I've been doing that lately, and it's actually a really valuable way to help kind of evangelize the work of analysts, is getting on a call with prospects and customers and just talking through the validations you've received. So yeah, it's interesting. There's so many similarities in so many different ways.
I mean, I'm thinking this ties back to our conversation with Becca from LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, yeah.
The multidiscipline nature of the AR role, if it's done well, was the takeaway I took from that podcast.
Yeah.
Absolutely go back. If you're a listener, go back, check that episode out. Becca Chambers, we call her Becca from LinkedIn, but because she's so prolific on that platform. But I think it speaks to this point of it's the kind of connector role and how sort of AR's at the center of that.
What were we going to say?
I was just going to say, she actually has that as her LinkedIn banner on her page. Like
You can claim that. I think she can claim that.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah, Keith, we just postulated on a bunch of stuff, and I don't know that there's a question there, but please, if you want to pick something up, go for it.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that resonates here is, and this is all super validating for me, so I really appreciate it. We talked about this just before the show, but this is like my welcome party into the analyst relations community, because I've really just kind of been in isolation myself, trying to make sure that I'm doing okay in the role for the first couple of years, right?
There's something in that though, Keith. So many of what I describe as the me, myself, and I analyst relations people, that was in the genesis story of this podcast. There's so many people who, are doing this job on their own that there isn't a community of other people to talk to. So this was kind of a way to pull together those voices and validate that all the things you're sitting there on your own thinking about are what other AR pros are thinking about.
Well, community appears as everything. Doing something on your own is much harder than working with people who've already done it before. This is the way to go. So I'm a big fan of this podcast existing. And I was also going to mention just between AR and product marketing kind of having similarities. We're talking about inputs and output. It's like input, throughput, output. And different things fall in different areas of that spectrum. And so what I end up talking about a lot is going upstream a little more and trying to see how we can talk about and showcase those areas of input that we work on. And for analyst relations, product marketing, same thing. People look at the output or the deliverables. So for us, it's the fact that in reality, why are a lot of analyst relations programs funded? And it's to get into an analyst report, right? So that's the output. And it's like, well, what's the input that has to go into making that true? There's some misconceptions there, like pay to play and things like this, where in reality, it's like, a lot related to how well we're doing in the market, which is why this input side and the market research and analysis is so important. And so I see analyst relations and product marketing in a perfect world is kind of like this this feed or speakerphone into the executive team where we can help improve the quality of executive decisions by bringing in that right content and data and insights of what's going on in the market and what that means for the future.
And you're also illustrating, I think, why the insights many times can be more valuable, or the inputs can be more valuable than the outputs. Like report placement is great and important, and I'm not going to say it isn't, but it's not the sole value that product marketing or analyst relations bring to an organization.
Yeah, it's an easy one to point to.
The way you're phrasing it's really sort of so much, and I've been with a bunch of analysts, and we ended up having a conversation around one of the analysts doing their first sort of comparative study that published, and it literally published this week. There's so much of the focus of, are we a leader? Where's our plot? Where's our dot? And that's the output of a process, not the whole process. And I think what you're doing, Keith, is really describing it well. Of you got to think about the inputs into that, and more broadly your overall AR program, because that's just one of the outputs. So, and we talked about it. We talked about it with analysts influencing analysts. You can get to that output so many different ways, but you've got to think about all those inputs.
Yeah. Well, see, and that's one of the things we talk about, the value of the output and the inputs, and there's different deliverables here to pick at, and I think there's more conversation to be had there. But one really important component of this is that the inputs are upstream to the outputs. It's a system: input, throughput, output. So what that means is the better the inputs, the better the outputs. The strategy is the story for product marketing, right? So if you're trying to make a good story, you better have a good strategy. The more time you invest in the inputs, the better the whole thing is, the better the whole system is. And so that's why the input is so incredibly critical. Yet what everyone is looking at is just the output. They're thinking about the vending machine, the deliverables, the report, and not recognizing how much time we should be spending in this area, the inputs, so that we can have a better effect on the actual value of the output. So that question, or where the conversation should go from there, is how can we better focus on these deliverables, spend more time here, showcase what we're doing here, let people see the value of that, and how that will trickle into later then having us a better value on the outputs.
Nathan, it seems like we need to update that PMA slide and give Keith credit to bracket. So Nathan and I did this presentation for the PMA AR Summit, and we came up with sort of like a framework of how to activate the analyst relationship in different parts of go-to-market. And it seems like we can actually draw a clear line, right? Because everyone thinks top of funnel is the output.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is your top of funnel can only exist if at the executive strategy level, we're hitting on all cylinders in order to get to market, have product market fit, all of the things that you need to be successful as you're trying to win in this competition we called capitalism.
Competition we call capitalism. I love that.
Yeah. Which, hey, I love it, right? It's great. It's healthy. It's what keeps us moving forward. But yeah, it's like
the best model we've yet found. It's the best model we've found. It's not perfect, but it's the best we got.
I think the pros and cons of capitalism might be a whole other podcast.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about that. But I consider myself a capitalist with boundaries, but I value humans, but I also really like money, so there's that.
That's a
Um,
whole different podcast.
that is a whole different podcast.
I think about 400 of those other podcasts exist already as well.
Yeah, we'll let them do that. Actually, this is kind of a fun thing to talk about because Keith, you are totally like kind of a counterculture kind of dude with which I want you to do your Airstream cribs um on LinkedIn one day. So you want to tell us a little bit about that? Let's get to know you. Like the human part of our world is so important.
100%.
You seems like you had a big shift, right? You were an analyst and now you're a product marketer and you're living this grand adventure.
Yeah, that's probably worthwhile to, I guess, share what that's all about. So I live in an Airstream. As I mentioned before, I tend to do uncommon things. So I'm serious about that. So I've lived in less than 300 square feet for now 4.5 years. And this was a COVID decision. That's where this all started.
Okay.
And I can tell
You
a whole
should
little
chat to
backstory about
Keith
that if you want.
Townsend. Keith spent a lot of his last few years living in a 28-foot Airstream.
Yeah,
You guys are
I've
gonna do
recently been introduced. There's two Keiths and Airstreams. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I remember.
That's a podcast.
That's a podcast name. I was just thinking the same thing. Two Keiths in an Airstream.
To meet somewhere and do your analyst, I don't even know what we can coin it, but your Airstream cribs episode.
It would be fun. That would be very fun.
Keith is good value as well. I mean, his was a COVID decision as well, Keith. He kind of needed to go and see vendors and couldn't get on planes, so kind of did a road trip in an Airstream to go see a bunch of vendors and meet in their parking lots and do kind of activations. So he did a really good, Keith did a really good job of that kind of Airstream kind of journey piece.
In there,
my entry was very actually kind of circumstantial. So I worked at Gartner during COVID, and so I was technically remote already, though I actually lived 9 minutes from the Gartner office, so I was going in rather regularly before that. My wife, however, owned and ran a franchise, so I was the co-owner of this franchise. My wife did all the work, though, so I'm kind of rude calling myself a co-owner. But the franchise was STEM for kids, basically after school program, and which was awesome until having an after school program was not very awesome during COVID. And so we had to shut it down. And unfortunately, we made that decision very quickly. But my wife took, she's also she's in the uniformed services. She's United States Coast Guard Reserve.
And service.
Yeah, I tell her all the time. I highly appreciate what she does, and I love the Coast Guard. But so during COVID, it was obviously very sad to not have the franchise anymore. But then suddenly, as a reservist, she was needed because there were a lot of cases at the ports. So actually, she ran the tracking of COVID cases at the port of Miami, which was basically ground zero in the U.S. It was one of the earliest places where cases were because of the cruise ships. And so she went and did that, and that was in Miami. And I've always lived a couple hours, not always, but I've lived a couple hours from Miami for a long time. We go, we visit. I've always said, Miami's cool, would never live there, right? It's just, there's a lot going on. It's busy. It's just too much for me.
It's and then we went on the beach, in my opinion.
Yeah, Miami is its own little country. It is phenomenal in so many different ways. Yeah. It is very different from everything else around it. And so, but we went and lived there because she had work. We just went and did it. And we lived in the Coconut Grove area. If you've ever been there, I just love it so much. It literally changed my impression of Miami to actually live in it. And especially when it was so quiet, getting to go out and do the walkable stuff and, restaurants outside and all this kind of stuff. And it made me think for a second. I was like, wow, I said I would never live here. And I just absolutely adored living here. I don't know anything. What else don't I know, right? And so that started the whole thought process of what else should we go learn about or try or figure out or experience or test? And so we just gave up what we thought was our normal life that we should have and said, let's just try other stuff and we found out that we really, really love trying other stuff and experiencing other places and cultures and the way people think and the way people live. And it's just been an incredible journey to do that.
Nathan, I think that Keith just it just made me think about that LinkedIn post you post last night or yesterday at some point about what are some characteristics of good AR.
Oh yeah, good, great post, by the way. Check it out.
And the thing I said is like you had teach and learn sort of in there, and I was like, yes, this is kind of embedded in there, but I think a deep rooted curiosity is probably one of the most critical things. And I think that, Keith, is what that experience awoken for you. You clearly have always been you're not an analyst if you're not curious, right? But it just took it to the next level. That experience.
It's a sentence. It's a set of sentences I use to describe kind of analysts. We're not smarter than other people out there. We just get better signal and we have more time to be curious.
I love that so much, Steven. I love that.
You know, because people kind of put you on this pedestal and think you're really smart and all the rest of it. And you know, they're smart
Don't worry.
guys.
I don't think you're that smart.
No. I'm trying to be
Just
humble.
kidding.
I'm trying to be humble, Crystal. I don't do it very well, John. So I'm trying to be humble. But no, people kind of people sort of put analysts on this pedestal of like, oh, they're really smart. And the way I describe it is, if you speak to senior executives every week, and you speak to CEOs, and you speak to VPs of product management, and you have one-to-ones with them, and you have chance to ask questions, and that's all you listen to every week, and you're curious enough to listen to, that's the basis of where analysts get their knowledge from, obviously talking to clients as well and end users. So it's the quality of the signal that you get, and there's definitely something in that, I think. So, I mean, yes, you've got to be smart, and yes, you've got to, but it's the intellectual curiosity and the quality of the signal.
Well, that also just might
So
be
well said.
the most important characteristic of a modern day professional. I mean, people are experts, like people are smart, but at the end of the day, whether you're an executive or you're an individual contributor, so many people are just trying to make it through, like just trying to figure out like what comes next, what's tomorrow, what's next week, what's next year look like. There's a trend on the internet where every time these high level Silicon Valley executives will get together, like one of the business publications will ask them questions like, when do you get up every day? Like, when's your first meeting? What's your breakfast? And just once, I'd love to see, like, do you know what you're doing?
And the answer is generally absolutely not, no idea. Right?
Well, I mean, I think
It's true.
I think there's something in that, Nathan. I think these guys have, from spending some time around these senior leaders, I think they've got the vision bit. They know where they want to be 2-3 years from now, and they know the tools they've got available. The bit of how you actually get there, they are genuinely figuring it out.
Well, and I did not mean that in like a diminishing or negative way at all. I mean it in the truly authentic, like that is the human experience, is
everybody
figuring out how to get there. Like, kind of where you're at today, where you want to get tomorrow, whether you're a CEO or you're just graduating college, and it's like, we're gonna figure it out live. We're gonna figure it out.
And guess
what?
Go ahead.
We all have imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
Because we're all just trying to figure it out. That's
whenever I feel like that, Keith, I tell myself this thing I saw on YouTube like 15 years ago when I was going through like a big life event, and it was this whole presentation on you're right until you're wrong. And that for me was profound because like, right now I'm living this way and it feels right. And then it stops feeling right. And there's something that changes it. And guess what? Now we move on to the next thing, so you're right until you're wrong.
To shamelessly tie everything together and get us back kind of to AR, I mean, we kind of just hit on the value prop of having good analyst relations programs and working with analysts. Steven, you mentioned earlier, one of the things that makes analysts so effective is they have all of these different signals and more time to spend thinking about it. That's what makes executives successful too, right? Having a team that can provide them different inputs. Analyst relations is that team for your business, right? It can help you consolidate all the
100%.
different inputs from the market, from these experts, and you can figure out what you're doing together. You can co-create. And I think that's so important too, because one of the underlying things that we always hear from analysts is they're people too, and analysts truly do want to have a vested interest in the success of a business. It is not just a one-way exercise of influence to an end.
100%.
It is a collaborative process to move forward.
That's when the
With that-
relationships work best, I think, Nathan. When it is
Absolutely.
collaborative and there is kind of a general, I mean, invested's a great phrase, I think, like intellectually invested in the success. Like, I mean, we talked about pay to play. I think it's intellectually invested rather than monetarily invested, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You're going to get to a
It does.
question and I cut you off, Nate. I could see where you were going.
No, you're okay. I was just going to use that as an opportunity to kind of transition into our last segment, which is this is new to you. Product marketing is new to you. Analyst relations is new to you. So this is going to be a bit of a curveball, but please, like, where do you think this industry is going? And you can speak about that from the product marketing perspective or from the analyst relations perspective or a joint perspective. You decide how you want to go. Talk about that.
It's a phenomenal question, and I feel like a phenomenal time for it too. Just with, I mean, I feel like everyone's always been saying that over the years. There's always something shiny and new, and especially when you come from Gartner, and that's what we focus on is what's the big new thing.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to ignore AI right now, right? And
What's AI?
one of what is that? I don't know.
We went
Well,
40 minutes without mentioning the two
we
letter.
did.
letter acronym.
I'm really proud of us for that.
That's
I really
a
am.
win, I think.
Is that
I agree.
robotic
Good
process
lord.
automation? Like, what? Can you elaborate a little bit? What is that?
Well, the funny thing about that, and I love that you asked that jokingly, but it's like actually the goalposts of what AI is just constantly changes, right?
Yeah.
That's why it's like a black box to people, because we usually start defining it after the things that people normally see as compute. But then over time, things that we used to see as AI, we now just see that as algorithms, normal compute, if-then statements, right? And the more we learn about AI and the more we get to the next phase of it, the more we just move the goalpost on what we call AI and what we just call compute. So to me, that whole thing by itself is just rather fascinating. And I'm very glad we didn't talk about it for 40 minutes. It was quite pleasurable not to.
So let's go back to talking about it. It was a part of your answer.
The second hour of the AR Chat podcast is AI.
Well, so I guess I'll wrap it up fast then. But what I really wanted to say about it real quick is I've said some, I would say both positive and negative things about Gartner. I'm very honest about that. And that's my outlook on life in general is, you know, I try not to focus on one end. I try to be realistic. And so I do the same with AI. But the sweet combination is Gartner and AI, and that conversation is rather interesting right now. And I had posted somewhat recently that, you know, there's been a rather big drop in Gartner stock, and Gartner's not really talking about AI's impact on what Gartner is doing. And I'm more worried by the fact that they're not talking about it than I'm worried about what AI is actually doing to them. So when we talk about what's the future of AR, it's like, well, first, what's the future of analyst firms? I think is a really good question. And I want to be clear.
It's a podcast episode in of itself,
yeah. So to keep it simple, because there's so much more to unpack there, but I would say that analyst firms are definitely impacted by AI, but not exactly in the way people think. And AI cannot replace what Gartner does. The Gartner business model cannot be replaced by AI. And there's a lot of, you know, we can talk all kinds of different pieces of that, like trust is a really good one. That will get eroded to some degree over time. But ultimately, you know, I think AR's got a bright future. I think analyst firms have a bright future. I think AI has a bright future. We'll see ups and downs. For analyst relations right now, AR sounds a lot like AI. For analyst relations currently, you know, we have Gartner who's pulling more into the vendor side. They're looking at doing more Magic Quadrants. They're looking at doing more with vendor relationships, going to more vendor events.
They like doubled that, by the way.
The amount of Magic Quadrants over the next, like, whatever, 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah, they were reducing MQs in 2023. They were trying to do less of them, which everyone thought was bizarre inside Gartner, but that's what they were doing. And now they're doing more, and that's great for analyst relations, obviously.
They were right until they were wrong.
Well,
yeah.
I think you're underlining something, Keith, which is that for analyst relations, the true value of the profession in the future is just increasingly the things AI can't do, which is deliver the what it means in the higher level kind of value operations to a business. Obviously, if AI can ever do that, well, we're all in big trouble. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right on the money.
So, guys, I'm going to pull us to an end there. We could carry on, Keith. This has been a fantastic 42 minutes of podcast. I think there's at least 3 follow-on episodes. But you've been watching AR Chat, where we bring the analyst relations community together to talk about the big themes that are facing analyst relations, product marketing, and the wider landscape. Please click subscribe, do all those things, tell a friend. We're trying to build a community, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.